and then it'll be maddening, but he'll probably go on to take credit for a manufacturing boom, even though it has nothing to do with his policies. And his particular tariffs backfired the first time. It made it worse off the first time.
Kyle Kulinski on his channel Secular Talk does a conversation here about Trump's proposed across-the-board tariffs and specifically why they are such a bad idea. So I want to watch this with you. I'm going to have some comments of my own that I will add in along the way, and then I want to know what you think in the comments section. But let's check it out together.
One of the things Trump ran on very clearly is not just tariffs, but an across-the-board tariff. Now, I got to be honest, that should terrify you. That should terrify you because it makes no sense. Now, I've often said on this show, I fancy myself, to at least one degree or another, a protectionist. I think in certain instances, tariffs make sense, but you have to do it in a logical way. So in other words, if there's a particular U.S. industry that you would like to revitalize, what you do is you tariff foreign goods from that same industry to try to raise the price on it. And then you have the U.S. product, which is same quality or better quality, and that sells at a lower price point because they don't have to pay the tariff because they're not importing anything, right? So in specific contexts, tariffs can make sense.
A recent example of this is the electric car manufacturing in China.
But Trump is calling for an across-the-board tariff. Now, that doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons, but one of them is prices for everything will go up in that scenario, right? You're just arbitrarily raising the price of everything. The other thing is some things we don't make and we can't make in this country. So why would you tariff something that we're importing out of necessity? Again, that's just going to be inflationary. That's just going to drive up the prices. And again,
that's an excellent point that I hadn't considered.
This is one of the policies along with, the border wall and immigration. This is one of the policies he kept coming back to, talking about how he thinks tariffs are going to fix this country and fix the economy. It would be an absolute catastrophe if he did an across-the-board tariff. It's just idiotic, right? It's just idiotic. And that's from somebody who fancies himself some semblance of a protectionist, but he does it in the most mindless way, right? And I should point out, he claims the unilateral authority to do tariffs for national security reasons, so he might not even need to go through Congress. Now, it's possible that the courts strike that down, and they tell him, this isn't really national security, you do have to go through Congress, and then Congress probably wouldn't be able to do it, but he may try. He may try to do it on his own, and it's possible it even stands up in court. We don't know, right? But look at this. So let's dive into, he did some tariffs in his first term, and we should dive into it. So New York Times says the following, this is the title, Chinese companies have sidestepped Trump's tariffs. They could do it again. The companies have found plenty of new channels to the U.S. market, demonstrating the potential limits of the tariffs Donald Trump has promised to impose. After President Trump slapped tariffs on Chinese bicycles in 2018, Arnold Kamler, then the chief executive of the bike maker Kent International, saw a curious trend play out in the bicycle industry. Chinese bicycle factories moved their final manufacturing and assembly operations out of China, setting up new facilities in Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, and India. Using parts mostly from China, those companies made bicycles that they could export directly to the United States without paying the 25% tariff had the bike been shipped straight from China. Quote, the net effect of what's going on with these tariffs is that Chinese factories in China are setting up Chinese factories in other countries, said Mr. Kamler, whose company imports some bicycles from China and makes others at a South Carolina factory. So in other words, if part of the goal here for tariffs is to make the U.S. more of a manufacturing powerhouse like we used to be and win this manufacturing war with China, you're actually doing the exact opposite. The net effect of these tariffs is the exact opposite, that not only is manufacturing in China proper thriving, but also now they're setting up factories in other countries, Chinese factories in other countries. So they are spreading their footprint while our policy idea here is backfiring. If we want this to hurt China and help the U.S., it's quite literally doing the opposite. All right, let me give you more. Pushing those factories into other countries resulted in additional costs for companies and consumers without increasing the amount of manufacturing in the United States. We're going to come back to that point because that's super important, Mr. Kamler said. He said he had been forced to raise his prices several times as a result of the tariffs. Quote, "There's no real gain here," said Mr. Kamler, whose bikes are sold at Walmart and other retailers. "It's very inflationary." As Mr. Trump prepares to return to office with sweeping plans to impose more levies on foreign goods, economists and business owners are pointing to unintended consequences that resulted from his tariffs the first time around. Beginning in 2018, Mr. Trump imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of foreign metals, washing machines, solar panels, and products from China. His administration said the levies would force companies to set up factories in the U.S. Did that happen? It didn't happen. Some industries that compete with cheap Chinese products like apparel and cabinet makers credit Mr. Trump's tariffs with keeping American manufacturers in business. Remember, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs under Trump, and his tax bill for the 1% outsourced 200,000 jobs and incentivized more outsourcing. Okay? So again, the idea that there was a manufacturing boom in the U.S., wrong. The closest we got to a manufacturing boom is what Biden did. What Biden did with the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Bill, the CHIPS Act. So it was Biden, not Trump. But let's continue because this actually gets more interesting. But for many other industries, the tariffs simply spurred a global reshuffling of manufacturing operations, one that did little to strengthen U.S. production or reduce ties with Chinese firms. Companies have merely shifted their factories to other low-cost countries in Asia or Latin America instead, and U.S. imports from those countries have surged. Some companies have severed their ties with China, but others have retained close connections even as they have moved their operations out of China. Economists say many companies, both Chinese and multinational, have continued to rely on Chinese products and parts, which are now flowing into the United States from factories set up outside China's borders. In other words, some Chinese products are merely taking a longer trip around the world on their way to the United States.
So it's worse for the environment as well.
In an attempt to avoid tariffs. Rather than making global supply chains stronger and more diversified, economists say this may be weakening them while adding costs for companies and consumers. And then they go on. Oh, this is the part I wanted to share with you guys. So, in a speech in May, you have the deputy managing director of the IMF said that what China is doing now is they're using these connector countries to get the goods into the U.S. without the tariff. Connector countries. So have Chinese parts, have everything ready to go, ship it to another country, then they just put it together in this other country where if you ship from there, there is no tariff. There is no tariff. So again, China's footprint is getting bigger and it's not reinvigorating U.S. manufacturing. That's the point. Again, the closest we got to that, and you're going to see over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, you'll see more of this. But under Biden, it's a net creation of 800,000 manufacturing jobs. And that's because of the CHIPS Act, and that's because of the Infrastructure Bill, and that's because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so he got us closer. So what is Trump missing in his analysis? In Trump's mind, he thinks, look, if we do tariffs, that by its very nature will lead to companies wanting to build more factories here in the U.S. That's what he thinks, right? But he's wrong because you need industrial policy at the same time to make that happen. So like I said a million times, I am a protectionist to one extent or another, right? And the whole point of the tariff is to raise prices on the foreign good. Why would you want to do that? To try to incentivize people to buy American. But you need to invest in the U.S., in our manufacturing, in our industrial base, to have the ability to compete with Chinese companies. And that's the part he doesn't believe in.
Well, you know what's interesting is I understand the absolute both sides of it, and I think that is very important. I think Biden did do some of that stuff and it really hasn't gotten the kind of airtime or credit for it. The CHIPS Act is a good example of that, but you know, whenever Trump does something, air quotes, stupid, I'm not saying Trump is a genius, but, you know, there's something in it for him, right? So somebody has advised him to do this, and there's always a little something in it for him. So maybe it's these pass-through countries. Maybe that benefits them. And, somebody is greasing the wheel. In this case, the wheel is Trump. And we all get the shaft for it. And he just says, no, this is good for you. And we all say, he's stupid. Well, I don't think he's stupid. I think he's self-interested and he's looking out for what's good for him and sort of selling the rest of us out along the way. So my question would be like, what is this idiot thinking? Instead, I'd say, what's in it for him? Like, where's the grift?
Right? If you tell him that, he would say, oh, that's socialism. I don't want to do that. But that's part of how you have the desired result economically. You can't just say, we're going to slap tariffs on foreign companies and then voila, we're going to have more U.S. manufacturing. Because clearly, the calculation that's been made by a lot of these business owners is it's still not worth it to invest in the U.S. and build our factories here. I'd still rather build them elsewhere. And of course you have, because they'd make more profit that way. And then you have China doing this trick, which is, okay, there's a 25% tariff on us. Here's the product. All you have to do is assemble it in Taiwan or elsewhere, and then it goes in, no tariff whatsoever. So all you're doing is making it a longer process and having them avert the tariff, and you're not creating U.S. manufacturing. Because like I said, under Trump, it was a net outsourcing of 200,000 manufacturing jobs. So they already backfired. These tariffs already backfired. This is not the way to go. If you want to set up a system that's logical, that makes sense. First of all, you're going to have some semblance of free trade because it is a global economy. There's going to be plenty of things we don't make here or can't make here. And so you need to have good relations with other countries for trade on those particular things. But if you're going to do tariffs, it has to be for a specific industry. And you have to pair that with industrial policy in the U.S. so that you fund our factories here, and then they could sell a product that's similar quality or better quality at a lower price point, which would incentivize Americans to more buy American than buy the foreign good, which will be more expensive and same or worse quality, right? That's the idea. And look, this is something Biden understands this, right? Trump does not. In fact, Biden kept a lot of the Trump tariffs in place for this particular reason. But again, he paired it with investment in our industrial base to make it so the tariffs might work. The thing, Trump goes out there and he says, tariffs don't raise prices. They don't even raise prices. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, bro, the whole point of a tariff is to raise the price, to disincentivize people buying the foreign good over the U.S. good. But he wants to raise the price without even having investment in U.S. manufacturing because he's not incentivizing it, right? And then it's just higher prices and that's it, right? And they were able to clearly skirt the way the tariffs were put in the first place. And if anything, it's made China stronger. So not only has his tariff policy backfired, it has backfired colossally. It has backfired spectacularly. And if anything, he should be thanking Joe Biden because while Trump lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, Biden gained 800,000. And if Trump is smart, he will not repeal the IRA. He will not repeal the CHIPS Act. He will not repeal the infrastructure bill because these, and you see this all the time, right? The Democrats do something good, and then Republicans, after the fact, start bragging about, yes, I'm cutting the ribbon on this new bridge that we just opened up in my district. Right. And it's like, you voted against the bill that made that bridge. So what the hell? But they'll be happy to jump in front of a parade. If Trump is smart enough, he will not repeal those things, and then it'll be maddening, but he'll probably go on to take credit for a manufacturing boom, even though it has nothing to do with his policies. And his particular tariffs backfired the first time. It made it worse off the first time. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully he's smart enough to not try to do a universal across the board tariff, especially given that his first crack at it had massive unintended consequences that were economically disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, I would grind my teeth. I do grind my teeth every time the GOP takes credit for Democratic initiative, the benefit of Democratic initiatives. But if that were the cost of not suffering inflation across the board, I would prefer Trump leave the Biden stuff alone and take credit for it than him dismantle it and do a victory lap. And, I guess suffering him taking credit for something he didn't do is easier for me to swallow. It's easier on the wallet than the other way around. But let me know what you think in the comments.